Welcome everybody. Welcome to another session of TeikaTV. I've got the amazing Megan Gleason next to me. She's our customer success expert.
Hey everyone.
And to my right, we have Andy Coughlin, our head of seller growth.
Hi everybody. Thanks for joining today.
So thank you everybody. We've got our big screen up. So what we're going to do is have an amazing discussion, and we'd love you to post any questions, any comments, and we want to interact with you. So please go ahead. We're going to read out any questions that come through. And the topic that we're going to cover today is the Amazon earnings report. So let's get started by getting some background on, at a high level, what is an earnings report? And I thought, Andy, you'd be a good person to kind of start the conversation, because you worked at one of the world's most prestigious public tech companies, Microsoft, for many years.
Yep.
Why are earnings reports important?
So I was at Microsoft for 12 years in a different capacity all over the world, and this was one of those barometers, right? It's just one of those reports that certainly the street looks at, but I think for the community, in primary purpose, it's about profits. That's what it is. That's what earnings report says, like earnings per share. Amazon's earnings per share this quarter were pretty good, 52 cents per share. But really, and I'll wrap some other financial thought around that, but more importantly, it's about the health and the direction and the investments that companies are making. And that's where I want to really dig into, because as we talk about the earnings report, I think it's just the precursor, but there's so many interesting facts that you learn about Amazon and what they're doing, particularly to the customer experience.
And can those facts help our sellers, the audience? I mean, if you're a small seller around the world, you're selling on Amazon, why is how much money they made as a billion? I mean, literally, Jeff Bezos became the richest man in the world. He passed Bill Gates.
He did.
That's the second time.
He did, which is personally an attack on the company I used to work for.
So but as a small seller in the ecosystem, why is it relevant?
I'd say most importantly, they're your partner. So you want to make sure that the partner that you're working with is financially healthy, right? Number one. Number two is it is to be ahead of the curve. So what investments Amazon's making? How do you take advantage of that? Vis-a-vis advertising, headline, we're talking about sponsored products, we're talking about, headline search. The Whole Foods acquisition, that's important. So we're going to talk about those things. So yes, I'd recommend actually two things, right? We kind of joked about this. Everybody in our company has read, the Everything Store book. I'd read the book if you're gonna partner with Amazon. It's a great read, and it just gives you insight to just how thoughtful and how smart these guys are.
I think what's good about the book is, it was written from a perspective that was, when Jeff Bezos started.
That's right.
And it's actually playing out.
That's right.
What I think is amazing is just the fact that now we're in 60% of Amazon's volumes going through third-party retailers like our sellers, our amazing sellers, and the selection is bigger than ever. And a lot of the book is about that vision way back.
That's right.
Before 2000.
This is exactly right. It goes back to 1997.
And how it started in several categories, and now we have
the Everything Store.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
So I think sellers are a really good topic. Megan, you work with some of our best sellers. You've been interacting with hundreds of sellers who you help so many people. What do you think the best sellers are doing right now, and has it changed?
It's definitely evolved over time, because Amazon is constantly, as we're seeing from the earnings report, their resources being allocated towards really advertising now. Before it wasn't so much there, but as we're seeing it grow with sponsored products, headline search ads, even lightning deals, certain avenues like that, that's a huge opportunity for sellers where they need to be ahead of the curve, especially with these recommendations.
I totally agree. And actually on the earnings call, it was reported about 58% year-on-year increase in the advertising portion of Amazon's revenue, which is huge. And then other research, 83% of that advertising is with sponsored products. So what are you seeing the best sellers doing with sponsored products? And this would be really good for our sellers to listen in. I mean, you're on the front lines helping sellers with our software, sellers who haven't used any software. What are they doing?
Well, I think a good word to use, I know you've used this in the past, is to be nimble. It's constantly evolving, the evolution of it, and being able to pair it with other advertising avenues, I think is like a huge, huge opportunity. And just, if you're not doing sponsored products, you need to. I think you need to jump on the bandwagon there and just be ready to, use that as your marketing budget, your exposure, especially if you're a brand. I mean, that's huge.
And then you mentioned budget. So one thing I was thinking about, and I think would be valuable for lots of people watching, is how much does it cost, do you think, to start a new brand? I mean, if you're starting today and Amazon is pushing advertising so hard, is the cost of starting a new brand going up? How much?
Yeah, I mean, as more and more sellers are jumping onto Amazon and, the categories are growing, and we're seeing a lot of sellers actually going towards brands as Amazon's allocating resources towards brands. The competition's fierce, so you have to be really allocating that spend and that budget that you're marketing to get that product exposure. And just to bring up headline search ads again as a new program, that's definitely a more expensive program to invest in, especially if you're a brand, just because that cost per click can be higher. You definitely want to be using both strategies together.
So you're seeing how many of your sellers using sponsored products are also using headline search?
A lot. They're using them simultaneously and together as a kind of a full throttle strategy.
But I think something we talked about earlier today is you need some of the data out of sponsored products first, right?
Yes.
So I know Megan, you're working with, I don't know now, probably hundreds of sellers every week, right? What are you seeing? Like, how are people actually, like, tell the group, like, what do you, if you want to get into the advertising game, which you should, where do you start and how do you work that out?
Yeah, you definitely need to, invest in sponsored products.
Yep.
Because if you're not, you're not gonna, especially with product launches, if you're a new brand,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get that exposure initially because your product's unknown.
Would you,
No one can
sorry,
find
would you
it.
suggest to overinvest
Almost.
as a new brand?
That's actually a common pitfall I've
Yeah.
seen is sellers not investing enough, and they're being really conscious of their margins. But this is the time when you really need to kind of push through and say, hey, it's my marketing budget. I need to go a little bit further, especially for the initial launch months of say 3 months.
Yeah.
And then really make sure that from there you can always tone it down after that initial launch.
Right.
Sorry, it's because now's the time to go. I mean, Q4 the eyeballs are there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's interesting because I don't know how many folks are, and I'm just curious, right? It's like, are you thinking about advertising as your actual marketing budget? Like, if you think about a lemonade stand or whatever that might be, you're going to have to spend money to get people interested in your product. So I guess, in terms of talking to sellers, is that how they're thinking about it? Because I know, sponsored ads is still very new, but are they thinking, hey, you know what, I've got to maybe even lose money to get the flywheel going?
And just to add to that, so I mean, I know everyone wants to know this. What should an ACOS target be? Is that even? It's almost a trick question, but I'm going to ask it to you because I know everyone wants to listen into that.
I feel like that's the question that I've heard this probably a couple hundred times at least now. And the real question or the real answer is that it's not really a specific number, but the only downfall you have is setting it too low.
Well, actually, sorry to stop you there. We've got a question from David. Thank you. What is the average advertising budget versus revenue? So in a way, it is a ratio. How much should you be putting aside? And I think, David, it really comes down to what type of product in what stage. I mean, I think, Andy, your point is very relative to David's question. If you're looking at launching your new brand, it's so valuable to get conversion. It's so valuable to get reviews, and that's what's rewarded by the Amazon ecosystem. So you're going to want to think about actually having a very, very aggressive ACOS target.
I think you brought up a good point about what category you're in. Some are a lot more saturated, some are really untapped, and we see just a lot more people taking advantage of the untapped.
David says he's in beauty products, and that's actually a really strong category. There's a lot on the different categories in the earnings call. Of course, the common theme kept coming up around the Whole Foods acquisition, grocery, but beauty products is a very hot category. We have lots of sellers doing very, very well there. I think beauty products are an area where, hopefully, David, you've got really strong margins. You've got a nice, lightweight product that has relatively low FBA fees. And really, that's where we've seen a lot of sellers do very well. So what's really important in beauty, reviews matter. People are concerned about the quality of beauty products. We actually did a really good webinar a year ago with one of our beauty sellers in Hawaii, and the detail that the brand, it's called Elizabeth Mott, the detail that the owner put into the content, actually hiring a professional copywriter. What else, Megan?
Not just for product page content and the images, but it was even the enhanced brand content. They had the brand registry, it came full circle, and to really kind of hire someone to get that and professionally do it, I think it makes all the difference, because when it's well done, the conversion, you can't put a price on that.
I completely agree.
So let's keep going on the questions. Thank you, everybody. It's really fun when the questions keep coming in, so keep firing them across. Alex is asking, we sell wine gift baskets. How should we go about shipping such items? We currently ship from our warehouse, but knowing that Amazon is discontinuing selling wine, should we just give up and sell direct to our website? So wine gift baskets, I'm assuming that's the actual alcohol in there. Let's talk about the shipping logistics with FBA. I just want to make sure we're not to separate talking about just shipping in general.
Yeah.
So FBA, that comes up a lot in the earnings calls. I mean, Andy, what's your thought around the ecosystem of being able for a seller to be able to leverage FBA relative to shipping themselves? I mean, what I'm getting at is the specialization, right? Like you worked at Sonos and Microsoft, where these are huge companies that have all the logistics. I mean, what's so beautiful about Amazon is that sellers can now take advantage of that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'd say, first of all, as a precursor even to that question is the report around Prime, right? So Amazon's putting so much energy into Prime, and Prime is directly associated with FBA. I think the report now says 90 million people in the United States are
3 times the amount. Sorry to cut you off, but they're spending 3 times as much as regular.
That's right. So I think you start there, right? So should you be utilizing FBA? The answer is you should be. And I'll get to the iterations of what that looks like, and we can talk through that. But again, just to remind folks is that there's 90 million people in the United States. I mean, there's 320 million people in the United States. So the numbers are outrageous, right? But what I think is really interesting related to the logistical component of this is I think the shift from, if you were to ask, 100 people, okay, what is Amazon? They'd say it's a website, okay? That's what Amazon was a few years ago, okay? If you think about what's happened just simply in the last 6 months in terms of what they're trying to do around the customer experience, because this is what customers want now. They want to be able to pick up a wine basket on the way home from work. Well, guess what? You can go to Kohl's, which Amazon now has a partnership with. You can go to over 400 Whole Foods, which Amazon has acquired to pick that up. You've got, they've introduced Key, so that's now in through your home, right? So there's any number of ways that a seller can now partner with Amazon and deliver that experience.
And that's a really good point. And I think the smartest sellers, the most profitable sellers that we work with are aligning with that. So Alex, I'm not sure, how can you adapt, but I guess our takeaway would be to think about how do you leverage that Prime customer base? How do you, appeal to it? Cheryl's got a really good question that I'm going to direct over to you, Megan. Cheryl's asking, is it smarter to bid low to have high daily budget, for example, 15 cents per bid with $25 daily budget? So
that's a great question. I mean, that's a huge question, especially around as we're approaching the holiday season, is running out of budget, being able to afford that budget. But a big misconception here is that you're not always going to hit that budget. It's just a cap. So, you really want to have that cushion between your daily spend and your daily budget. Because think about it, if you're on the East Coast and your budget runs out midday, the West Coast, that's millions of people that can't see your ad, for example.
That is a fantastic
point. So
point.
being able to control that and make sure there's that cushion, I think that's just going to impact overall, basically your holiday season.
So Megan, so you're seeing some sellers actually get a sense of running out of budget throughout the day? We actually see that, right?
Yep. And sometimes it will take up to 24 hours for that new budget to take effect. So you need to be really proactive about where your bids are, how much you're spending, and also a tap into the increase in traffic.
I think that just emphasizes how valuable using optimization software, that's what we've devoted our team to building. And with software that can control the ACoS limits, basically you can give us the opportunity to make sure that you're not going to be overspending for ads. Then, if you have that in place, you're able to actually set a much higher budget and really never run into that situation. With the right automation software, and the right platform that we offer, you're actually able to really extend the budget, so you never hit it. You never want to be in the situation that Megan's talking about there.
Especially if your campaigns are performing and you're getting that ROI there.
I know why. I know why that happens though, because people are concerned about overspending or the ACOS going through the roof, and again, that's why having our platform. So if you guys are dealing with that problem, we have a free trial of the platform, and it just gives you that opportunity to not worry about the budget. You've got a lot more to worry about with respect to all of the other aspects of running the Amazon business. We talked about logistics, getting your product out there, and the brand and the pricing. The last thing you want to worry about is running out of budget.
Especially during the holiday season.
I wonder if there's a way, because we've got, and again, thanks everybody for the questions. There's a bunch of them here. But it is the question of the year. Is like everybody still feels like it's a silver bullet. Like, what's the magic ACOS bit? So how do we demystify that in a way?
Yeah.
I think there may be something here about the value-based bidding. I think there's something. Megan, how do you?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah.
It's going to really vary on your category, what your business objectives are. Like if it's your product launch and you're a brand and you need that initial exposure, that's going to be a lot different when maybe in the product lifestyle stage when it's more matured.
Yes.
Also time of year, seasonality. It's really going to vary, but you need to set those ranges accordingly where the higher ACOS targets are for product launch.
Yes.
And then it kind of goes down from there.
Okay.
So I want to pick up on Andy's points. 90 million Prime subscribers. It's the cheapest it's ever been to be able to start a brand. I mean anyone really has the ability to get in front of that size of customer base with Amazon. And one question I had is relating to Brand Registry. So Amazon has now made it much more brand centric. The ability for Amazon to respect trademarks. So Megan, this is a question for you because I know that you're an expert in this. As a brand, what should every seller be doing to make sure that they're aligned with Brand Registry and really taking advantage of this new opportunity to launch a brand on Amazon?
Well, first of all, the new Brand Registry 2.0, the new program that launched in the spring, is to really have that trademark active. I know some sellers who have actually applied for this and in the process of the trademark, it's still pending. They can't get Brand Registry and they were denied. So that's a huge component, is to have an active trademark.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly, active trademark?
To make sure you have your brand and your logo registered. It's legal.
With the US trademark?
Patent.
Patent office.
To have that. And, from there you can actually, the ROI on it is just enormous with the Brand Registry program.
So thanks. So trademark, and then what's next?
You need to submit your logo, your brand name, some images, so your product with the logo, and then packaging with the logo. And from there, they typically, and your own.com. So you need to submit your website, and then from there, Amazon will review it and actually reach out to the agency that you applied the trademark with.
So sorry. So once you do that, and I apologize for interrupting, but once you do that, the benefits, because again, a lot of the questions here are, our friend was asking about the beauty products and stuff. What if you do that? What are the benefits that you immediately get from Amazon?
Yeah, so it's really protecting your brand on Amazon, and what that means, I know that sounds very vague, is the content, the logo. A lot of people will jump on your listings and play around with the content. You have complete control over your product pages. You also have kind of this almost separate portal where you can look into content, copyright, all that stuff. So it just really gives you this bird's eye view of what's going on in Amazon.
Absolutely, and I think every smart seller is getting very clued into that early, because even things like headline search, enhanced detail pages, all of that needs to be aligned with having a trademark and being registered on Brand Registry. So it's surprising. We work with a lot of sellers who are heavy into sponsored products but don't have that set up. I mean, to your point earlier, Megan, it's sponsored products is one very important tactic, but there's a lot more to it. Eric had a note. He noted that to be registered, you have to be a word mark and not a design mark. So there's a little there's some details there.
Oh yeah, I would definitely check out Seller Central for all those specifics. just to make sure you're really set up to apply properly.
And then someone's asking, do we have a demo of the software? Yes, absolutely. There's a 30-day free trial of our platform. We want as many people as possible to take advantage of this amazing software we've built to help them with sponsored products. The link is in the Facebook live announcement, and we'd love to offer that to you. We've also got some comments on trademarking about the amount of time. I mean, so Linnell is mentioning that it's 6 to 12 months for a trademark. Let's talk in practical. You said you needed a trademark to do brand registry.
Yes, an active trademark, and I've heard from a lot of sellers, they're in the process, they applied, and it will take some time for it to process and for it to be fully active. If it's pending, it's not a complete trademark. So to have that full trademark is going to be definitely a waiting game.
So if Andy starts his new Wellington boot company tomorrow, are you saying he's going to have to wait 6 to 12 months before he can do all of these things?
Yeah, for it to fully process.
So that's really interesting. So that means one of the earlier questions we had is, what is the cost of launching a brand? That means it's higher because you have to think about
the cost
being
of
ahead.
the trademark.
And there's a real cost there in terms of time.
Oh yeah, it's
and
not
also
just
getting everything
capital.
set up.
Yeah.
Do you think what we'll see there is, I mean, again, less private label and more brand, and I want to talk about the distinction between those two. So, Andy, you've worked with some of the world's best brands. You're also head of our seller growth initiative. So you're talking to, amazing entrepreneurs. We've got some entrepreneurs that were on Shark Tank, for example, Mark Cuban's brands. What do you think the difference is between private label and brand? I know you're a big brand guy.
Well, it's actually interesting in that, as I've gotten a little older, what used to be hip and cool isn't hip and cool so much anymore, even for somebody like me. So you're looking for kind of cutting edge, like kind of things that aren't off the shelf anymore. So I think that's why you've seen even shows like Shark Tank, which is quite interesting that we actually have 3 or 4 brands, almost 5 brands now, that were actually on the show. And I think what's interesting is you can be successple on Amazon, but I do think it is this idea of kind of an omni-channel experience, right? You've got to have your own website. You've got to be able to be on Amazon. But I also go back to the point of being on social, taking advantage of all the things that Amazon's doing on the FBA. I think what's interesting too, in terms of that connection between, advertising, say with Facebook, you and I, Megan, talked about it this morning. Amazon just came out with what? The social, what do they call it? The social media promotion, right?
Yeah, early reviewer program.
Right.
All these opportunities to get early exposure and even bringing your brand outside of Amazon.
Yeah. So if you're advertising, on Facebook today, you can literally, okay, if it's my Wellington boot company, as a consumer, I can click on that ad on Facebook and it will bring you to Amazon now.
That's interesting. So Kevin brings up a good point about that sort of click promotion, but this is within Amazon. He's asking that, do you think Amazon will eventually enable sellers to redirect HSA to a specific page within your Amazon store and not just the homepage? Well, we know HSA is a really interesting space. It's actually called the Amazon Sparkle. It's the hottest real estate.
It's the headline.
Yeah, it used to be reserved for brands like Sonos or Microsoft to advertise, and now they're really seeing the opportunity with entrepreneurs like you guys able to kind of buy into it, if you like. And I think they are going to be testing all sorts of different permutations. To Megan's earlier point, it makes sense now for a brand because you're going to use some of those impressions to kind of create awareness and as you're pointing out, Kevin, send you to the homepage. But we think that that's going to change a lot. We think there's a lot of relationship between sponsored products. In the earnings call, it was an interesting clue. They talked about the relationship between relevancy to a consumer and advertising, almost like Amazon is looking into using advertising to enhance the consumer's experience. So I think your point, Kevin, really relates to that. I think there's going to be a lot of changes, and I think it's the sellers that are early to the game that are very clued in. And actually, honestly, that's why we're doing these shows, is we want to do our very best to kind of keep you ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Alex?
Go ahead, sure.
Oh,
yeah.
actually, Neha's example, let's not miss that one.
Yeah.
Any data analysis on the impact of having enhanced brand content on your listings? And that's really a conversion question. Megan, I know you look at a lot of conversion data.
So
what are your thoughts?
It definitely, what we've seen with a lot of sellers is it boosts conversion. It's going to definitely range by category and also the quality of it. Like we said, back to Elizabeth Mott's example previously with Established Brand, they had it professionally done versus maybe if you kind of didn't have professionally done versus that.
Just to point out for the audience, so in that example, Vera, who's the owner of Elizabeth Mott, actually researched and found a person, copywriter who worked at a major brand doing freelance work and actually paid to write amazing copy. Yeah, so I think, and then in terms of brand content, you're talking about sort of also enhancing that with photography in there as well.
Oh yeah, I mean lifestyle images, it's the customer wants to see themselves with the product and be able to display that in really great lifestyle images. I think that's huge. You know, you're not just limited to those, 8 different, spots at the top. It's just going to help conversion, and there's no specific percent increase, I'm going to say, because it's going to depend by category and also how
it's a no-brainer though. I mean.
It is. I guess in some ways, let's sort of synthesize. Let's kind of start, and Megan, course correct me, of course, right? In order, first of all, the trademarking bit. So first, you got to get brand registered, right? That's step number one. That's going to take 6 to 12 months, right? That's what the audience is saying too. Once you do that, though, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't get enhanced brand content. You wouldn't get access to HSA, right? So it feels like get trademarked, like get doing that today, number one. Get brand registered. Then once you get enhanced brand content, start to spend a bit of money on using a professional photographer, potentially a copywriter, because the devil in the details, it makes all the difference in the world. And then we get back to where some of the folks on the line were talking about what's going to happen with headline search. But you got to get to the party first, right?
Well, Bianca's talking. I mean, she's ahead of the curve there, talking about videos. Yeah, I mean, not permitted in all categories. I'm absolutely right. I mean, this is evolving so quickly. So I think it honestly comes down to testing and iterating. I mean, that's that's what we believe is fundamental to success is putting the measurements in place, putting the metrics in place, and then testing. And once you find out what's working, and we've seen huge performance around sponsor products. That's why we've worked with that. We're also testing headline search. I think a lot of this around testing, though, if the cost is going up to launch a brand, and every time you test, you have to do things like forward, look ahead, and spend more money to get trademarked. One question I have, Megan, for you is how many entrepreneurs are actually able to launch multiple brands? I mean, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was this whole wave of private label where people would use, let's say, tools like Jungle Scout or looking up keyword tools out there to try and just launch as many products as possible. Do you think this is changing? Because our most successful sellers, are they running lots of SKUs or are they going deep in their own brand?
I mean, I think that's a great question. It comes up a lot when I talk to sellers. And it's really, what I've seen actually is the differentiation, is to really diversify your portfolio and focus on, just be customer centric. Put yourself in your customer's shoes, what are the needs there, and fulfill those needs, and be able to expand your line appropriately. I've seen actually a couple of brands cater to different levels of customers, from like beginner to all the way to advanced.
But in that example, you're talking about them selling their own category. They're not, as an entrepreneur, you're not launching like a beauty brand and then a sports brand and then a baby shoe brand. Or then
we've seen a lot of people specialize and really just go deep in that portfolio.
I mean, I think to Andy's point about what's working and what we're seeing from, let's say, the Shark Tank brands and some of our best, I think what's going to happen is as the costs go up and the competition goes up, it's going to be harder. I mean, you've talked about this, and if you look at companies like Apple, Sonos, for example, they've actually got not many SKUs, right? They just do it really, really well.
Well, that was exactly what Steve Jobs did. He literally sat at, I think it was CES, and he said, all of my products can sit on this round table right here. because A, they were beautiful, right, and there was deep IP. That's what we're seeing, like the shift. And I think what's really interesting here, and Al didn't lead into this too much, but we've been around for a while now. Alistair, you were one of the first third-party sellers on Amazon, and over the last 4 years, it was heavily weighted towards reselling. And what's happened, just the business is simply because of the lack of profitability. Once you have all that competition, it's gone like this, and now it's opened up to all these cool brands, and it is brand versus private label. And private label will go the way of what reselling went. It's about finding something that's unique. I mean, I don't want to call it specific brands that we work with, but if you just think about the Shark Tank, kind of methodology, you go find cool IP, you get it trademarked, and then you do all those bits and bobs that we talked about and be ahead of the curve.
Do it well.
That's right.
And where do you sell the stuff? So we are on Facebook now.
That's right.
I know that you mentioned .com website. So when I hear .com, I think Shopify. I mean, it'd be pretty interesting to get any comments. It'd be interesting if people watching could comment if they have a Shopify store or not. We'd love to hear that.
Yes.
As we're waiting for that, what are your thoughts, Megan? Do you think what do you hear most people using, Shopify or other platforms?
I've actually heard a lot recently pop up as Shopify, just doing that multi-channel approach and being able to almost link them all together and just optimize all of them, especially with advertising on different platforms as well.
I think that's very smart, and I think what you said, Meg, I think is really, really critical, and it's sort of as cliche, but it's powerful. Is you just always start with the customer. Right?
Yeah.
Where does the customer want
Everything store.
Yeah, right. But where do you start? Where does the customer want your goods? And that might be a Shopify store, that might be an Instagram, that might be Snapchat, that might be at your local Whole Foods. That's why you got to think about it. So I think if you always start with the customer and make your investments there, then you're always going to win. And so I think that would be at least my guidance.
Yeah, so we've got Kevin, I think that's his Shopify store, so thanks for posting that, party supplies. I mean, that's going to be very seasonal, so I hope Kevin's going to have an amazing holiday season, so that's awesome. And Linnell, Shopify works really well, so thanks for commenting. Yeah, it's interesting. I think they're all getting very close. When we think about brand, it's like where Instagram, Facebook, these are all areas where you can express yourself more. And some of the things that we've been talking about with Amazon really are really questions of whether Amazon's going to give the framework for entrepreneurs like you guys to express themselves. And that is really what's happening with Brand Registry, video content, and so on. So it's been a really, really fun discussion.
Are we done?
I think we're close to being done.
Oh, gosh,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
I could keep going. This is good.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else to talk about, Andy?
Well, lots of things. I think what I love, of course, going through these events is really what folks online are talking about. And I think what's interesting is when Shopify works what does that mean, right? Does it? I think if you were to compare sales,
it's just
right?
easy though.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would start. I think that where I would kind of lean in a little bit is I think that having a direct relationship with the customer is what it comes down to, right? And I think that's...
Oh, you mean because with Shopify you're able to...
Yes.
That ability to really brand
you can use
yourself
email
there.
marketing.
That's right. I think that's how you start to create, advocacy around your brand. I think that's something that Amazon's trying to do, but there's a lot of hurdles in the way to go do that, right?
Yeah. Do you think... oh, here we go. Kevin says, we use our Amazon account as a tool to build our brand. We want to traffic to redirect to our domain.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Okay. Yes.
So that's interesting. Even if you look at the world's largest brands, a lot of the packaging has the .com on it.
Oh yeah.
And it's this sort of grey area there of are you in a way you're not violating clearly Amazon's policies, but I mean let's say you buy a Sonos speaker on Amazon.
Yep.
You register for that. Well, you actually have the app. So you acquire the customer through Amazon.
That's right.
But and actually the Sonos app has actually they're marketing the new speaker on there.
Agreed. In the app. Yeah.
In the app.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
So I think that's smart. I think what Kevin's doing there is really smart. Sorry, one last question there from Alex. Seems like Amazon is only interested in brand. What about standard sellers? Do I have to register as a brand to matter on Amazon? Well, that's it. Well, I mean, we've gone very brand centric because we are sharing what we believe and what our data tells us is the future.
That's
so I
it.
think, Alex, it's not as if resale goes away. This arbitrage opportunity that resellers have. I mean, that's how I started in 2003 myself. I think there's always an opportunity to find those areas. There's a lot of resellers that are signing exclusive relationships with brands, and that's one area that I think resellers can explore. For example, if you build a really good playbook, you get to figure out how to use sponsored products, headline search, how to optimize FBA. Resellers have the opportunity to go to brands and say, we will almost be your agency. And that's a business model that we've seen really.
A hybrid model where you get those exclusive, and I've seen a lot of resellers actually branch off to become private label.
I think that is a very valuable tip, both of you. I mean, again, coming from traditional retail, and this is gosh, who knows who's on the line, right? But a lot of like traditional brands in say brick and mortar, having sold the majority of their goods through brick and mortar, they don't understand. Right. They just simply don't.
So your point is that there's a lot of opportunity for sellers, entrepreneurs who learn the Amazon playbook, and then and there's a tremendous gap.
I think that's right. I think you've got, because you're going to have pick ABC brand. They're going to have teams of folks that are actually on the same learning curve as we are, right? As entrepreneurs are. So wouldn't it be something special if you're going to stay in the kind of the reselling world, the wholesale world, to be able to go to a brand and say, listen, I know how to do this really, really well, right?
Let me help you bring it to Amazon.
That's right. So I think that's interesting. But I still say, look, we're very fortunate. We've got thousands of sellers that we're helping every day, and we have tremendous data that tells us that the way to success is to look for IP, is to start working on your own brand. So I think you still got to consider that.
So one more actually from the earnings call, we have to touch on it because it came up a lot. So international. I know we have lots of international sellers listening in to our Facebook Live and also working with us.
Yeah.
India came up a lot.
Oh, yeah.
India came up a lot. Brazil came up as well. Yeah. I think if we just use India, right, as a proxy for a moment. I mean, India, as we know, is all third party, right? The detail, or the data that we see is, while a big country with lots of folks in it, maybe 200,000 sellers, maybe 250,000 sellers, right?
Yeah. Well, growing.
That's right, growing like crazy. That was the big point, right? Is that is a geography that Amazon's focusing on materially.
Yeah, within the launch of Prime within India, within the first 12 months, biggest increase in Prime members of all territories.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. The sheer scale. I think it's the second largest country outside of China, right?
That's right.
So when you think about China as sort of wrapped up with Alibaba as the dominant player, and that's much more mature in China, whereas India, it's runway. Oh, yeah. So that's why there's so much interest for Amazon, so much growth potential, and that's to wrap this whole thing up.
Yep.
That's actually the value of listening to earnings calls. It's the ability to kind of see ahead, listen to the leadership, and they're looking to grow. So, that's why India came up. They know it's a greenfield opportunity. So, we're going to post some links to the earnings transcripts, some links to the earnings slides. I know that many sellers don't listen to the Amazon earnings or don't research this, but I think it's really worth it. And that was the spirit of today's chat. And we hope everyone enjoyed it. And we'll see you again next Thursday at 3 p.m.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.